Hi, I'm Marilyn Laurie, and here on the 25th anniversary of the Page Society, I'm sitting with Ed Block, the original force and energy behind the creation of the Page Society and where we are today. Tell me why Page was so important to you and what caused you to feel the need to bring him forward to everybody who ever worked at AT&T and then to this larger universe.
I was working for Southwestern Bell in St. Louis. I'd come out of newspaper work, like most of us did in those days. I walked in this door here and we started doing things in community relations and media relations, employee communication. And I thought, I guess this is the way it's done. And then I realized there was a similarity. There was a system that everybody was organized that way. And I thought to myself, well, that couldn't have been the Tooth Fairy. Somebody must have thought of this. And that's when someone told me there was a man by the name of Arthur W. Page, who was the first vice president of what we now call public relations in the United States.
Arthur Page didn't create the Bell system, but he did infuse in it something enduring that could be called the conscience of corporate responsibility. He built what is now regarded by many as the classic corporate public relations operation, where public relations was not just a department, but rather a way of thinking.
By the way, just for the record, you never knew Arthur Page.
I never knew him, no. He was a guy that came from a very distinguished North Carolina family who had moved to the New York area. He attended prep school in Lawrenceville. He attended Harvard, the gentleman's C's, as they used to say at Harvard.
No scholar by any means, Arthur cultivated his love of history and literature while in school and began honing his writing skills, contributing stories to the school magazine. Upon his graduation in 1905, he joined his father, Walter Hines Page, at Doubleday, Page & Company as a writer and editor for World's Work, a popular business publication.
His father was a distinguished journalist, and he also was a confidant of President Wilson. And
His father?
His father was.
Son of a gun.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why he was ambassador to England, to the court of St. James, prior to and during World War I. That was Arthur's father.
I never heard any of this before.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated. You're saying that Arthur Page came from a family that knew the value of the word, that wrote for a living, that knew the value of influence, and exerted that influence in a political sense on the CEO of America, which is to say the president.
That's right.
So when he comes into his first job
He'd been down that
in
track.
corporate America, I'm beginning to understand the attitude that he brought with him.
Yes.
Arthur Page was an idealist, and he did not take his freedoms for granted. During World Wars I and II, he took up his pen in defense of the country as a war correspondent, and later as an influential thought leader for the military. In many ways, this prepared him for the break he ultimately made with the publishing world.
The day he was hired, I believe it was 1926, the CEO of AT&T apparently wanted him to write a book about the Bell telephone system. Arthur Page said to the CEO, "If you're looking for a publicity man, I'm not interested. I'm interested in policy making." And so the CEO of AT&T said, well, come to work and you'll get a policy-making job. And the reason that's important to know about Arthur Page, his basic premise was that what you do is what counts. Your actions count, not your words. So his notion from day one is that if you get your policies right, most of your public relations troubles are not going to emerge.
During his tenure with the AT&T Corporation, Arthur Page wrote a bountiful body of work, which is his legacy, letters, speeches, and memorandums. From all those thoughts captured on paper, his successors have been able to glean important principles which stood the test of time and are the foundation of Page's public relations philosophy. Straightforward ideas for responsible action, simply stated, like the man himself.
He was that kind of unprepossessing personality, very humble. But I do have one story about him that I just love to tell because it's right on, and that is that The old AT&T headquarters was on the corner of Broadway and Dye Street in downtown New York City. And so Page's office overlooked Dye Street. And across the street there was a business executive who could look out of his window and look into Page's windows. And as the story goes, he was troubled by what he saw going on in Page's office. So he knew the CEO of AT&T, so he called him up and said, you have a fellow who's working for you that, as far as I can tell, he never does anything. I can see into his office, and he sits at his desk, and he smokes his pipe. He gets up occasionally, paces around the office. I don't see what he's doing. And the CEO of AT&T said, he said, that would be Arthur Page. He said, he's my very best man. He's the only one around here who thinks.
Arthur Page was a writer, but his most effective tool was his mind, not his pen. At the age of 63, Page left AT&T to start a new phase of his life as a business and public relations consultant.
We are now prepared to destroy more rapidly and completely every productive enterprise the Japanese have in any city.
When President Truman had the anguishing burden of announcing the atomic bomb and the dropping of the atomic bomb on Japan, it was Page who was called to the White House to consult with the president and write the announcement that President Truman used. So he had that kind of reputation built up over a long period of years.
The ultimate PR guy.
He was.
By the time I got to sit in your chair many, many, many years later, I was told that the desk I was sitting at was Arthur Page's desk.
Correct.
And the heritage that you carried weighed on me in terms of ensuring that you lived up to the principles, the ethics to try to influence the policies, recognizing they had to be in the public interest.
Yes.
So in that sense, the story continues. Which brings us to the Page Society. What did you have in mind with the founding of the Page Society?
It was our custom to bring together the vice presidents of all the Bell companies and my staff and myself for periodic conferences to talk about policy. And so at the very last one of those meetings, only months before the actual physical breakup of the Bell companies, one of the people present at that meeting said, why don't we create an Arthur Page Society as a basis for holding us together? And on that sort of semi-teary occasion, everybody thought that was a wonderful idea.
The first chapter of the Arthur W. Page Society was written December 19, 1983, when papers were signed to incorporate the not-for-profit organization carrying on the ideals of its namesake. Jack Coton, president of the Society, recognized early on that the fledgling organization would have trouble sustaining itself as an AT&T alumni association. So it was ordained that the Page Society would have a broader mission and be open to executives from all corporations. They asked Larry Foster, still glowing from his elegant handling of the Johnson & Johnson Tylenol crisis, to become the first non-Bell president of the organization. And with his enthusiasm, he proceeded to recruit members from all quarters.
Page the man is our inspiration, but it's the principles, it's the legacy that we are selling, because we want this society to be concerned about the issues, the problems, the opportunities that occur at the intersection of the chief public relations officer's job and the chief executive's job.
Yeah.
That's the Page territory. That's our territory.
Over the past 25 years, the Arthur Page Society has grown from a small band of company friends to a national association with over 350 members who are among some of the most esteemed figures in the public relations profession. Each year, the Society honors individuals for career achievement and their outstanding contributions to the profession through the Hall of Fame and Distinguished Service Awards. Their accomplishments show a strong commitment to the Page principles and the continuation of this legacy.
What do you attribute the success and strength and growth of the Page Society to now, 25 years later?
Well, Page's ideas. The Page Society is all about are these fundamental ideas that Arthur Page, not the Bell Telephone Company, Arthur Page articulated and showed us how to make them work in a big organization. And he also showed us, that's the policy part, showed us how to make them work in what we now call public relations departments.
It seems to me we have to be vigilant in keeping this flame of it's about policy, it's about doing the right thing, it's about influencing the outcomes of the corporation. We have to be careful that we keep that right at the center of what Page is, and as we go on, not become another professional society, if you will.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, obviously, but there's ways in which you do that. I think one is you need a few grumpy old people like me around to keep reminding
Right.
that, let's keep our eye on the ball here. It's keeping an eye on that intersection between the CEO and the Chief Public Relations Officer and building our programs and our communications in that target, because that's the Page territory, and it's unique, and it's a big enough mission for anyone.
Amen. Ed, thank you. Thank you for sharing on the 25th anniversary where we come from, and thank you on the part of all of us for driving this Page legacy from the time I was a tot in the business and first heard about him from you all the way through to today. We're lucky.
Thank you.
We're lucky.
If I had known I was going to end up as a star of a nostalgia show, I would have worked harder and faster. So thank you. I've enjoyed it.
So what I think corporations and their CEOs need now is a new generation of Arthur Pages. Not Arthur Page reincarnated, because then was then and now is now. But what's needed now, I genuinely believe, are men and women who know how to and have the guts to apply some of the timeless principles that Page and his contemporaries established